Have you ever wondered why some men, not rich, not famous, not even conventionally attractive, make women obsess over them? It is not luck. It is not magic. It is emotional strategy, a kind of power so deep that history tried to hide it. And the man who discovered it was not a psychologist or a dating coach. He was a political exile, humiliated, betrayed. Yet even from the depths of social rejection, he saw human nature more clearly than anyone else. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli. His legacy is made of principles so dangerous that the powerful have studied them in secret for centuries. But today, you are going to see them. And no, this is not about cheap seduction tricks. It is not about lines or games or pickup tactics. It is about becoming the kind of man who leaves an emotional imprint on a woman's mind, even when you are no longer there. Because desire does not follow logic, it does not answer to what is right. It responds to what is intense, unexpected, and uncontrolled. This is where the Forbidden Method begins. Machiavelli wrote about princes, kingdoms, and wars. But if you read between the lines, you will realize something shocking. His principles do not just teach how to rule an empire, they teach how to command attention, desire, and emotion itself. And that is far more powerful than any surface-level technique. Because once you understand how desire truly works, you stop chasing attention and start creating obsession. The first principle is brutal. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But do not misunderstand this. It does not mean intimidation, force, or manipulation. It means that desire is born from emotional respect, not constant availability. That magnetism does not come from pleasing. It comes from impact. Women do not obsess over what is easy to reach. They obsess over what is mysterious, unpredictable, what challenges their emotional logic. And you can become that kind of man, but only if you abandon the false idea that being good is enough. Because being good is the minimum. Being addictive is another league entirely, and only those who understand the real laws of desire can play it. Ask yourself this: how many times have you given everything only to receive indifference? How many times have you been there for her while she chased someone who did not even treat her well? It is not injustice, it is human psychology. And unless you understand how desire operates, you will keep losing, again and again. Now listen carefully. Desire is an emotional addiction, and like every addiction, it is born from contrast, not stability. From the emotional roller coaster, not the flat ground. From uncertainty, not absolute safety. If you want to awaken deep desire in a woman, you must stop being the safe ground, and become the emotional storm she cannot predict or forget. Machiavelli understood that control is not gained by force, but by perception, through calculated gestures and powerful silences. And that is what you will learn in this video. I will show you the 5 pillars of the Forbidden Method of Seduction, each designed to turn your presence into a psychological magnet so she does not just think about you, she cannot stop thinking about you. But first, understand this. If you seek female validation, she will feel it. If you crave approval, she will know it. And in that instant, all your power vanishes. It is not about what you say. It is about what you communicate without words, your energy, your focus, your presence. That is what impacts her. That is why this method begins with you, with an inner transformation so deep that it will change the way you see the game of desire forever. Because this is not about conquering her, it is about becoming the kind of man who never needs to chase, because he is the one being chased. A man with purpose, with boundaries, with a life so rich, so focused, so passionate, that any woman who enters it must earn the privilege to stay. That is the core of emotional power, and it is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." In this context, to command does not mean to dominate. It means to lead, with pure masculine energy, with conviction, with presence, with the silent power of a man who does not need to prove anything, yet proves everything simply by existing. And if you are ready to awaken that version of yourself, prepare. Because what comes next is not easy, it is not comfortable, but it is real and it works. From this moment forward, each principle you will learn is a weapon, a piece of the puzzle that will make you unforgettable, not for what you give, but for what you represent. This is the hidden art of strategic seduction. This is the Forbidden Method, and you are about to master it. What you cannot predict obsesses you. What you cannot control consumes you. And in the psychology of desire, the unpredictable is not a flaw. It is the key that unlocks emotional addiction. Machiavelli understood this on a political level. He knew that a prince should never reveal all his moves, because once the people understood him completely, they would stop fearing him. And without fear, there is no power. But in the realm of seduction, the principle is exactly the same. What a woman cannot predict makes her feel alive. The first pillar of the Forbidden Method is to control the emotional rhythm. That means destroying routine, breaking patterns, and becoming the opposite of the nice man she can read like an open book. Desire does not ignite through logic. It ignites through contrast, through strong, unexpected emotions that shake her just enough to make her think about you. One day, intensity. The next, distance. A deep message followed by absolute silence. An intense gaze, then a cold change of topic. That is emotional power. That is intermittent reinforcement. Do you know what neuroscientists discovered? Intermittent reinforcement creates more addiction than any drug known to man. In a classic experiment, researchers used rats. When the rats pressed a lever and always received food, they eventually lost interest. But when the reward came at random, they pressed the lever desperately, for hours, even days. Human emotions work exactly the same way. When she does not know when your attention will appear, she starts to crave it even more. But be careful. This is not about playing with someone's emotions irresponsibly. It is not empty manipulation. It is about recognizing an ancient truth. Consistency loses value. Rarity becomes irresistible. And here comes the story of Julian. Julian was the kind of man women always called a good friend. Always kind, always available, always boring. One day, after seeing his third message ignored, he finally had enough. He decided to apply the principle of unpredictability. He did not seek revenge. He did not play dirty. He simply changed his pattern. He began to disappear after sending a message. He replied with fewer words. He ended conversations before she did. He became the one who walked away first. The result? By the second week, she was the one chasing him. By the end of the month, she confessed she could not explain it, but she thought about him more than ever. Why? Because Julian was no longer safe. He was a mystery, a challenge, and desire loves challenges, but that was not all. He also started focusing on his inner world. He went out with friends, hit the gym, worked on his business, no excuses, no announcements. He simply lived. And suddenly, he became interesting. Remember this. Unpredictability cannot be faked. It must be lived. It is not about acting mysterious. It is about having a life so rich, so full, so authentically yours that she can never anticipate your next move. Because when your life already has rhythm, intensity, and purpose, you no longer need to pretend to be interesting. You are interesting, and that keeps her alert, connected, emotionally hooked. This triggers one of the most powerful effects of all. She begins to imagine you, and what she imagines is far stronger than anything you could ever show her. Mystery creates space, and she fills that space with her desire. Machiavelli knew that the image of power is often stronger than truth itself. You do not need to invent anything, you only need to ration it. Do not give everything at once. Do not reveal your whole story in a single date. Do not unload your entire past in the first conversation. That is not connection, it is emotional overload. Do you want to become unforgettable? Then show yourself as a man with layers, depth, and hidden rooms that cannot be accessed immediately. Make discovering you a privilege, not an automatic right. Why do open-ended movies obsess us so much? Because our brain needs to close the story, to understand, to complete what is missing. And that same mechanism happens with you. When you leave emotional spaces open, she cannot resist the urge to fill them. And when you combine this principle with the previous one, your inner power, your conviction, your focus, you create the perfect formula for what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety. That irresistible pull of wondering what will happen next. That mental state where someone cannot stop thinking about you because they no longer know what to expect from you. When you reach that point, she stops comparing you to other men. She compares you to the version of you inside her head, an idealized, mysterious, fascinating version that no one else can replace. That is the power of the unpredictable, and it is the first real step toward emotional seduction, the kind that creates lasting obsession. Desire needs friction. Without resistance, there is no attraction. It is a law most men ignore, and that is why they lose. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. In his book, The Art of War, he was not just writing about physical battles. He was teaching something deeper: how to use conflict as a tool for emotional control. When you apply that principle to seduction, you discover the second pillar of the Forbidden Method: strategic tension. Now listen carefully. Most men believe that to make a woman like them, they must agree with everything she says, laugh at every joke, accept every suggestion, and avoid any disagreement. Without realizing it, they become emotionally predictable, submissive, easy to read, easy to forget. Do you know what that creates in a woman's mind? Zero tension, zero mystery, zero desire. Machiavelli would have called it a beginner's mistake, because he knew that power is not built on pleasing, but on earned respect. And respect is not born from avoiding conflict, but from knowing how to handle it with elegance. Strategic tension is the art of creating controlled micro-conflicts. It is not about fighting, it is not about arguing, it is about stimulating her mind through emotional contrast. A practical example: if she says she loves a movie, do not reply, "Me too," automatically. Ask her, "Why do you like it? What did you see that I did not?" That small resistance creates a spark, a moment where you are not submitting, but inviting her to explain herself, to defend her perspective, to invest effort. And when she invests effort, she unconsciously begins to value you more. Want another example? If she suggests a plan, do not say yes instantly. Offer an alternative. Show your preferences. Draw a subtle boundary. Those small moments of friction do not create distance. They create curiosity, respect, and attraction. She will not say it out loud, but her subconscious will understand it instantly. This man has a spine. He does not collapse just to please, and that is irresistible. I remember the case of Esteban. Brilliant, educated, charismatic. Yet every relationship lasted 2 weeks at most. Why? Because he was the kind of man who said yes to everything. He adapted completely to the other person, and in doing so, he disappeared. One night, after agreeing to watch a movie he secretly hated, she looked at him and said, without filter, "You are sweet, but I just don't feel that spark." That sentence broke him, until he realized that the spark does not appear when everything is easy. It appears when there is fire, tension, something to resolve. So he changed his approach, not to become harsh, but to become authentic. And the transformation was immediate. When he started defending his opinions, speaking with firmness, and no longer avoiding friction, she began to desire him. Because when tension is handled the right way, it does not push people apart. It pulls them closer. Think about any love story you remember. What kept you hooked? The moments where everything was perfect, or the moments filled with doubt, conflict, and restrained passion? Exactly. The human brain falls in love with resolved conflict, with emotional contrast, with friction that transforms into connection. That is what creates emotional addiction. Not perfection, not smoothness, but the ability to move through chaos with calm authority. And that is what we call emotional leadership. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see, but few can touch." How does that apply here? Everyone can see a nice man, but few can feel the intensity of a man who does not fear emotional friction. That man is rare. He is scarce. He is dangerous, in the best way. And she feels it. She senses it. She desires it. And this power does not just appear in words, it lives in your body language, your silence, your eyes. When you hold your posture with confidence, when you do not apologize for having an opinion, when you can meet her gaze after softly disagreeing, you project a kind of security that almost no man possesses. That is effortless seduction. But remember, strategic tension is not just resistance. It is also knowing when to yield, when to relax your tone, when to let her shine, when to show vulnerability intelligently. That is what makes it so powerful. because contrast is what creates the spark, and you decide when to ignite it and when to let it fade. That is emotional control. That is inner power. That is what Machiavelli taught to rulers, and what you are beginning to master now. When you control strategic tension, she never knows whether you are about to kiss her or challenge her, and that uncertainty drives her wild. Because desire does not live in certainty. It lives in possibility, in that emotional space where control and chaos dance together, and you have just learned how to lead that dance. What do all the men who truly obsess women have in common? They are not the most handsome, nor the richest, nor the nicest. They are the ones who leave empty spaces, silences, mysteries, absences, spaces she feels compelled to fill. This is the third pillar of the Forbidden Method, the strategic void. Machiavelli warned rulers in his letters, sometimes retreat strengthens more than persistence. And that applies perfectly to desire. Because when you are always available, when you answer everything, when you explain every thought, she stops imagining you, and what is not imagined cannot be desired. If you want to be addictive, do not always be visible. Do not say everything. Do not explain everything. Do not always be there. Because desire does not feed on answers. It feeds on unresolved questions. Picture this. Two men say goodbye after a date. One floods her phone with texts. Good morning, emojis, sweet messages. The other disappears for a few hours, maybe a day, but when he returns, he does it with presence, intention, impact. Which one does she remember more? Which one does she think about? Which one does she miss? Exactly. Absence multiplies the value of your presence, and that is the principle most men misunderstand. It is not about ignoring her, it is about creating emotional space, a space where she must think of you, search for you, imagine you. And that is far more powerful than any pretty message could ever be. I remember Javier, a brilliant artist, passionate about his craft, who kept ruining relationships for one simple reason. He was always available. When he liked someone, his whole world revolved around her. He replied instantly, cancelled plans, over-explained everything, and every time she lost interest. Until he understood Machiavelli's principle of the void, he began to live again. He disappeared to paint, to travel alone, to stay silent when he did not feel like replying. The result? The woman who once ignored him started searching for him, wondering where he was, filling his absence with fantasy. Because silence, when it is genuine, activates a woman's imagination, and imagination is the most powerful amplifier of desire. Machiavelli once said, "Men are more offended by losing what they can never fully possess than by what they already control." That is the key. When a woman feels she does not completely possess you, when she senses there are parts of you she has not conquered, when she does not have unlimited access to your time, your mind, your body, she begins to desire you again. But remember, this is not manipulation. It is about having a real life. You do not disappear as a tactic. You disappear because you have a mission greater than pleasing anyone, and that is magnetic. Because when she realizes you are not a man waiting for her attention, but a man still growing without her, she feels fear, the fear of losing you. And that fear ignites obsession. But there is a second dimension to the void, the emotional mystery. Do not talk endlessly about your feelings. Do not explain every reaction. Do not hand over the entire map of your soul in the first week. Reveal yourself in layers. Let her discover. Let her work to know you. Let every revelation feel like a reward. Why do stories like the Fox or Batman fascinate us? Because those men show only one part of themselves. The rest remains shadow, unknown. And the unknown awakens the mind. You do not need to invent a persona. You simply need to stop displaying yourself like a storefront. Your story, your wounds, your dreams, they are not products for consumption. They are emotional treasures, and they should be offered only to those who have earned them. When she begins to earn them, when she starts to uncover pieces of you one by one, each truth becomes a deeper bond. And then something alchemical happens. You stop being a man and you become a story, an enigma, an emotional experience. And stories are never forgotten. Machiavelli also said, "What is gained without effort is valued little." When you are always there, when you give everything before she has given anything, you break the tension. But when there is emptiness, when there is silence, when there is pause, she begins to project, to idealize, to dream. And those dreams place you in a position no compliment could ever give you, the center of her imagination. So do not fear silence, do not fear distance, do not fear space, fear being forgotten because you were too present, fear being predictable, fear leaving nothing to the imagination. Because if she understands you completely, if she has read every page, she no longer needs to open your book. But if you have left pages unrevealed, hidden chapters, corners of your soul still closed, she will come back. And she will come back hungry. The strategic void is not absence. It is air, oxygen, emotional space where desire can breathe and grow. And once you master this art, you will not be the man she remembers. You will be the man she could never fully understand. And that is the hardest kind of man to forget. Now, what makes a man magnetic even before he speaks? What makes him command a room just by walking in? What awakens that deep, visceral attraction that cannot be faked? The answer was written by Machiavelli over 5 centuries ago, Virtù and Fortuna. But be careful, Machiavelli was not talking about moral virtue. He did not mean being good or ethical. For him, Virtù meant strength, inner power, the ability to impose order on chaos. Fortuna meant chance, circumstances, the forces beyond your control. And true seduction, the kind that creates obsession, is born from the perfect balance between the two. Virtù is what you control, your body, your mind, your energy, your presence, your purpose. Fortuna is what happens outside you, whether she finds you attractive, whether there is chemistry, whether the timing is right. Most men obsess over Fortuna, trying to be liked, to impress, to make things happen. But the magnetic man obsesses over Virtù. He knows that if he elevates himself, the right circumstances appear on their own, and that is power. You cannot control whether she replies to your message, but you can control whether you are building a life that makes you valuable, with or without her. That is Virtù. You cannot control whether that date turns into something more, but you can control whether you are already a man with clarity, direction, and inner fire. That is Virtù. And when that inner power meets an external opportunity, a glance, a conversation, a connection, the inevitable happens. Magnetism. Remember this. Women are not drawn to what is perfect. They are drawn to what feels alive, to what is intense, to what is in constant motion. If you are a man in evolution, a man who does not stop because of rejection, who does not freeze waiting for approval, who moves forward with or without external reward, she senses it. Not with her mind, but with her body, with her instinct. Because masculine energy is not understood, it is felt. And it is felt the moment you become a force. Machiavelli wrote, "Fortune governs half of our actions, but leaves the other half within our control. And that half is all you need." Imagine one man who depends on her choice to feel valuable. Now imagine another who has already chosen himself, who trains his body, sets his goals, cultivates his mind, and lives with fire. Which one do you think she desires more? Exactly. And it is not because of what he does, it is because of what he is. That is the secret. It is not about doing more, it is about being more. When you become magnetic from the inside, you do not need to prove anything. Your presence says it all. And here enters another powerful concept, strategic vulnerability. Because true strength is not being an impenetrable rock, real power belongs to the man who can show his scars without losing his center. I remember Ricardo, a successful entrepreneur, attractive, intelligent, but emotionally unreachable. That distance created disconnection until he discovered something profound, showing selected parts of his humanity, intentionally, not out of weakness, built deeper connection. When he did, women stopped seeing him as too perfect and began to see him as real. A man both strong and human, indestructible yet approachable, lion and fox at the same time. And that is irresistible. Machiavelli once wrote that a prince should appear virtuous, even if he was not completely so. Today, that translates to directed authenticity, showing your power, your purpose, and revealing your humanity in measured doses. Not to seek validation, but because you know your shadow has value, because you know your past mistakes built you, because you know that revealing yourself is a choice, not a need. That is mature magnetism. That is virtue with intelligence. That is the core of sustained desire. And when you live this way, Fortuna, that unpredictable part of life begins to play in your favor. You become a magnet for synchronicities. You see opportunities where others see obstacles. You transform rejection into redirection. You turn every experience into expansion. And it shows in the way you speak, in the way you look, in the way you walk. She feels it and cannot help but feel intrigued, drawn, connected. Because you are operating from your center, not from need, not from emptiness, not from waiting. You are walking like a man who no longer needs to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. And that, my friend, is the most seductive thing that exists. You have reached the end of the path, but this is not an ending. It is the beginning of your transformation. Now you know the 5 pillars of the Forbidden Method: emotional power, unpredictable rhythm, strategic tension, magnetic void, inner virtue. But there is something more, something that unites them all, something only great men ever understand. Machiavelli called it the alchemy of power, because true power is never imposed. It is projected, transmuted, embodied. You do not need to say it. You do not need to prove it. When you become it, it is felt. That is the difference between the ordinary man and the magnetic one. The alchemy of power means integrating multiple dimensions of energy. 1. Inner power, the strength that radiates from your purpose, your discipline, your clarity. When your life has meaning, your gaze carries it, and she feels it. 2. Social power, your ability to influence without asking permission, to lead conversations, to become the reference point, not because you demand it, but because others sense it. 3. Symbolic power, what you represent to her, your story, your style, your values. You are not just a man, you are a symbol, a mirror, an archetype that awakens dormant emotion. 4. Sexual power, it is not technique, it is energy, how you speak, how you move, how you touch, how you hold the tension and release it at the perfect moment. 5. Narrative power, the story you live and the way you tell it. Your life should not be a chain of events. It should be a film others want to watch, a world she longs to enter. When you master these 5 dimensions, you are not merely attractive, you are unforgettable. Not because you become perfect, but because you become real, authentically, powerfully real. Machiavelli wrote, "The greatest fortress a prince can possess is the affection of his people." And in this context, affection means emotional impact. The imprint you leave without touch, the sense that she experienced something different with you, the mark that stays even when she tries to forget. Only men who no longer chase approval ever reach that level. Men who no longer beg for attention, no longer fear being forgotten. Men who live from their essence, their fire, their presence, so firm, so real, so alive, that everything else naturally falls into place. Listen carefully. If you apply these principles superficially, they will not work. The Forbidden Method is not for pretending, it is for awakening. To awaken the man within you, buried beneath years of conditioning, insecurity, and fear. But now you know, you can rise, you can become a presence that cannot be ignored, irresistible not through technique, but through inner transformation. Do you want to know what truly makes her addicted to you? That you become addicted first, to your path, your purpose, your evolution, your power. Because when you are so focused on growth, so consumed by the conquest of your own life, she feels that she cannot stop you. And that feeling pulls her in more than any word ever could. You are not the prize, you are the fire, you are the portal, you are the experience that leaves a mark, and that has no competition. So remember this, true power is never begged for, it is exercised, not to dominate, not to manipulate, but to inspire, to become the kind of man who keeps shining, moving, impacting, even without her. From that place, attraction stops being a goal. It becomes an inevitable consequence. You have reached the end of this forbidden knowledge, but what matters